Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how an estate planning attorney should start a meeting with their prospective client. Right, so the backstory here is I have employed and I've mentored and I've trained many estate planning attorneys who want to get better at, turning prospective clients into clients, retaining more clients, making those prospective clients feel comfortable, training lawyers how to just kind of guide the prospective client through that process of becoming a client and getting that peace of mind that they so much want as they provide for their family. And so I've sat in a number of those conversations. I've done the training. Sometimes in the training, we do a bit of kind of role playing where there's the estate planning attorney who is this attorney in the role play situation, and then there's a prospective client. And it's always better to practice when it doesn't matter than to practice actually on your clients or on your prospective clients. So, but we'll do this role play, and I'll watch these people say some things in this role play, and I'm like, what are you saying? Why are you saying that? And of course, they're nervous, and role play is a little bit nerve-wracking to begin with, but they just haven't had the experience going through the process of taking hundreds or thousands of clients from being a prospective client and then guiding them through to the becoming a client process. So I want to talk about just some common sense things, but they're not practiced commonly. Because again, I've trained so many, and I'm like, yeah, oh God, mainly what they're doing is they're making people feel uncomfortable. So let's slow it down. Let's talk about the big picture. So when you use organic video marketing, it's great because those clients now find you. You're not having to find them and pressure them into coming to talk to you. But when you do that video organic marketing and you make some good videos and prospective clients find those videos and they're like, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. I think I'd like to have a conversation with him or with her. So people have watched your content, they consumed your content, perhaps they inquired, perhaps you screened them either by having a conversation or maybe through some type of questionnaire online, you screen them. So, a little bit perhaps about their objectives, their family situation. You may know a little bit about their net worth and what they own. And maybe they told you a little bit in an online questionnaire about what they're hoping to accomplish. But usually, in an online questionnaire, they're not going to bare their soul. All right, and then this discussion, it's either going to be just in person, face to face in an office or in a conference room, or it's going to be on Zoom. I have 100% of my new client meetings are on Zoom. I'm just spoiled to be able to, and now I insist that I do all of my client meetings in my shorts and flip flops. So all of mine are by Zoom, but I know a lot of people really like the idea of doing it in the office. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. So the idea here is everything you do in that first meeting with a prospective client, they're probably coming into that meeting with a mindset of something like, yeah, I think this might be the person that I want to help us, get all of our legal affairs in order. I think I know and like and trust this person, but I'm not sure that's the whole purpose of having that first kind of actual conversation. So you want to make them feel comfortable. They want to be comfortable. You want to make them feel understood. You want to make them feel heard. And they need to be aware that the meeting is focused on them and not on you. So a lot of your prospective clients, they're going to come in there, concerned that they're going to be pressured or sold. So they're a little bit on the defense or they're defensive kind of coming into the meeting. They're like, boy, is this person going to put the hard sell on me? Is it, they're going to trick me into doing something that I'm not fully prepared to get started? I think I like this person, but I'm not sure. So what you want to do is just eliminate all of that defensiveness right out of the get-go. And I will tell you, while most of a very successful first meeting with a prospective client that turns into a client, most of it is asking questions and listening to their answers so that you can ask the next right question. At the beginning, you're going to have to really set an agenda for the meeting, and it involves a question at the end. But let me jump right in so you'll know what I'm talking about. What you shouldn't do at the beginning of the meeting is, and I know a lot of attorneys like to do this because they're comfortable doing it, is just a bunch of that chit chat at the beginning. Oh, what'd you think about that weather last Thursday? Oh, I hear it's going to rain tomorrow. And they just, they go on about that. In my opinion, they're wasting valuable time, and that's not what that prospective client is there to discuss, what the sports team did last weekend, who they play next weekend. Oh, what neighborhood do you live on? What street do you live on? That's not why they're there. That's just a bunch of, to me, meaningless chit chat. Yes, sometimes if there is an item that you can connect with, it's great to make that connection. But I like to just, quite frankly, just jump right in. And so don't, and don't start with just a vague question of what can I do for you today? No, that puts them in an uncomfortable situation. You want to make it easy for them to respond to how you're guiding them. So don't say, tell me about yourself, because who knows what they're going to say. They might say, well, I'm 6'1". I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and none of that is relevant to what they're trying to do and how you're trying to lead them. And don't start by selling yourself or talking about your firm. Don't discuss your services. All that at the very beginning feels impersonal. It turns people off and it makes the conversation about you instead of them. All right. So, and also another thing, don't assume you know what they need before you hear their story. Number one, you have to hear their story and hear what's kind of deep in their soul about what they want to accomplish. So don't just jump right out and say, yeah, you probably need our living trust based plan, and don't, that kind of comes off as arrogant and salesy, and it risks offering the wrong solution. Also, another thing you can't do throughout your whole first meeting is use a bunch of complex legal terminology. Sometimes people call it legal mumbo jumbo. I like to call it legal gobbledygook. So all that stuff creates a barrier to connection, and it's likely to cause some confusion and probably even some intimidation. And then the last thing, so no complex legal gobbledygook. And then another thing, and it's no strange fact that lawyers generally like to hear themselves talk. Big mistake where lawyers, because they're nervous and they feel like they need to talk, they feel pressured to talk continuously to show their value. So silence in these first meeting, it gives the clients some space to think and reflect and share, and interrupting kind of breaks that trust. I like to say that when I talk to all these attorneys that, this ratio of who's talking how much, it's about right when the attorney is talking 25% of the time and the client is talking 75% of the time. If that gets reversed, attorney talking 75% or more of the time, you're not going to have a very successful meeting and you're not going to have a very successful practice. Okay, so with that being said, the first thing you want to do is very comfortably really just set an agenda. The client has no idea what to expect. They've probably never been in a meeting like this before. So you want to set an agenda for that client or prospective client that they're comfortable with, and they are happy to approve that agenda and to give you your first yes. So setting that agenda, even though again, asking questions is really your job, listening to answers, asking the next question, you got to set the agenda early in the conversation. So sometimes the first words I'll say after hey, how you doing, kind of quick, and kind of get to know each other is, here's what we typically do. Clients like to hear that because they're going to ask you all the time, do most people do this, or do most people do that? Or so when you say, here's what we typically do, or here's what's customarily done, they're like, great. We don't want to seem odd or different. So this lawyer is about to tell me what typically happens. Here's what typically happens when people like yourselves come in. I'm going to ask you to describe in your own layman's terms any kind of specific concerns that you have, or if there's anything specifically on your mind that you want to make sure we talk about. as part of getting all of your estate legal affairs in order, then I'll likely ask you some questions. And then at the end, I'll likely let you know the easiest way to accomplish everything that you want to accomplish. And I'll let you know what any fixed and reasonable expenses involved might be if we were to help you get everything in order. How does that sound? So that ends with a question, but and I would say 99.9% of the time, their answer is something like, "Oh, that sounds great." I see the tension in their shoulders release because you've told them that you're going to ask them, you're going to put the focus on them and that you're going to listen to them because you want them to describe what's important to them and what's on their mind about getting their estate legal affairs in order. And you've let them know that you're going to ask them some questions. They want to be asked questions. They're just not sure what those questions are going to be, so they can give you the right answer, but they want to be guided through this. And then I told them up front, at the end, I'm going to let you know the easiest way to accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish. So when they hear that, people don't want things to be overly complex. They want things to be easy and simple. And I didn't say, we're not going to serve your legal needs properly. I said we're going to figure out the easiest way to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. But they love that when they hear that because, and that's part of your job is to figure out the easiest way to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And what you told them was because almost every client in the back of their mind, some in the front of their mind, but almost every prospective client is thinking in the front or back of their mind. They're thinking something like, "What's this going to set me back?" Or quite literally, the words that may come out of their mouth are, "What is this going to cost?" So before they can even get that out, I address it in advance. So, and at the end of this conversation, I'll let you know the easiest way to accomplish what everything that you want to accomplish, and I'll let you know what any fixed and reasonable expenses might be if we were to help you get everything in order. So I let them know that we're going to figure out the simplest way. I let them know that they're going to hear from me what any fixed, and I said reasonable. We have a duty to provide services for reasonable fees. So I'll let them know that it's going to be fixed and it's going to be reasonable. And I'll let them know what that's going to be if they want us or me to help them put everything in order. So when I let them know that, they're thinking, "Man, that's exactly what I want to get out of this meeting." So when I say, "How does that sound?" 99 point whatever 8% of the people say, "That sounds great." So as soon as and occasionally somebody might say something else, but because they have something on their mind, but in the overwhelming number of people, when you deliver it just right, here's what we typically do. First, I'm gonna get you to tell me anything that's on your mind or anything that you want to make sure we talk about as part of getting all of your estate legal affairs in order. Then I'm probably going to ask you some questions. And then at the end, perhaps I'll let you know the easiest way to accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish. And I'll let you know what any fixed and reasonable expense might be for us to help you get everything in order. How does that sound? They're like, "That sounds great." They haven't made any commitment. They have an agenda and they're ready to talk. So once they say, "That sounds great," I immediately go into, because it's usually a married couple, and if it's not, it's just one person. But usually one of them is kind of the talker and speaks on behalf of the couple. Could be one spouse, could be the other spouse. So after they say, "Sounds great," I'll say, "All right, so which one of you wants to start by just in your own layman's terms, describing what you want to make sure you accomplish?" And real important in that is in your own layman's terms. It's almost like I'm telling them, I'm inviting you and I'm inviting us to dumb this conversation down. One of their fears is we're going to talk in legal gobbledygook and it's all going to be over their head. So I preface it early on. Hey, let's get you to just describe in your own layman's terms. Get used to saying that in your own layman's terms what you want to make sure we talk about today? And usually they'll look at each other and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll go. Now, there's absolutely no telling what will come out of their mouth when you say, look, why don't you just start by describing in your own layman's terms what you want to make sure we discuss here today? And maybe they'll say something like, we want to make sure we avoid probate because our father died, probate was a mess. Maybe they'll presumptively kind of say something like, we think we want to set up a living trust. And I don't even like to hear that answer because I like to get to the layman's version of that and get at what they're really thinking. So, but maybe they will, tell you what they're really thinking. Maybe they'll tell you something like, well, we do have a child, an adult child who doesn't handle money well. So we were wondering, how we should handle that. Maybe they'll say, we have a home. We want to make sure it goes to our daughter. She doesn't own her home, or, something's going to be on their mind that prompted them to come in and start a conversation. Maybe they'll say they have a special needs child. Maybe they'll say, we want to leave something to our grandchildren. Maybe they'll say, we want to make sure that our estate isn't paying any unnecessary taxes. No telling what they will say. And maybe they'll even say, Paul, we don't even know enough to know what to say, and that's okay. And there's a proper answer to that question. But whatever they say as a result of, so which one of you wants to start by just kind of describing in your own layman's terms what's on your mind that you want to make sure we discuss? Whatever they say, you better listen. Some lawyers will actually, kind of memorize and ask that question for them to start laying out in their own layman's terms what they want to accomplish. But then when the client starts talking, the attorney doesn't listen. So it's really, really critical to listen to what the client says. If and perhaps so much so that you should have a computer or pad and pen or whatever and write it down, everything that they say. And so if they said, we went through a tough probate, we want to make sure we avoid probate. Well, that's going to be kind of the overriding theme, not the only theme, but certainly an important theme of your conversation. I was working once with a gentleman. His estate was it's larger than most, 20 million plus. And when I asked him what he wanted to make sure he accomplished, he only had one concern. His concern was, I want my 30-year-old Ford Mustang to go to my grandson. That's all he cared about. And so, yes, he realized there was other stuff he needed to take care of, things like power of attorney, who's going to be the trustee when he dies, executor, blah, blah, blah. But that was his thing. And had I not asked him to describe in his own terms what he wanted to make sure he accomplished, probably never would have gotten out the fact that his thing that keeps him awake at night is the concern that his grandson might not get his Ford Mustang. So again, and we'll go through this later, but all throughout the whole next hour or so, about every 10 minutes, I was paraphrasing things. So let me recap where we are. We're talking about this, oh, and we're making sure that your grandson inherits your Mustang, and then we're talking about this, and that. Are we on track? He's like, yeah, perfect. Because every time I summarized, I talked about how his grandson was going to get his Mustang. All right, so very important that you listen. And all of that listening that you do when they describe what's on their mind, that's going to drive how the conversation goes, probably for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. But if you can just do that, you can set that agenda, get approval on the agenda, and then get them to start opening up about what at least is in their mind that they want to accomplish, and that you listen to their answers and maybe even ask more questions to clarify kind of what their most important things are. So, for example, if they said they have, one of our biggest concerns is we want our house to go to our daughter. That's what we've been talking about. We've been meaning to do that for a couple of years. So maybe you listen to that. You're like, man, that is really important to them. So the logical next thing for you to do would be to ask them why they want to do that. Get them to open up, tell you why, tell you why it's so important to them. And they'll probably tell you something like, our two other children are very successful. One's a doctor, one's this, he has his own business. But our daughter, she's just never been able to get on her feet enough and has never been able to own a home. We want to make sure she owns it. Whatever they might say, it doesn't matter. But you can even ask further clarifying questions about what's most important to them. And then you'll be starting to make that connection and they are going to feel certain that you are the person that can help them solve their biggest problems or put those concerns to rest because you asked them questions, you asked them about it, you listened, you asked more questions. And so that's how you get off to a great start in and turning a prospective client, giving them that peace of mind, making them feel comfortable, guiding them through this process of getting their legal affairs in order. So, a few core principles. One, you want to set the agenda. Two, you want to let their answers to your questions guide your next question. Three, you want to make sure the client feels heard. And again, that's all about listening. Always tell these lawyers, um, you know, in that first meeting that you have with clients, it's going to work out well if you, the lawyer, are talking about 25% of the time, and then that prospective client is talking 75% of the time. If that's flipped, where the lawyer is talking 75% of the time, you're not going to have a very good meeting and you're not going to have a very good practice. So that needs to be flipped. You want to make sure that client feels heard. You want to make sure you use their own language when describing your solution. So, for example, client may come out with this, oh, I'm in my second marriage. I've got my wife here. I've got a great marriage, but we each have our own children. Client may say, when I pass away, I want to make sure I set up a spousal wousel trust for my spouse. Nobody's ever heard of that term before. If you were using legal mumbo jumbo, you'd probably say Q-tip trust or maybe even spousal trust. So when the prospective client says, I want to set up a spousal wousel trust for Mary here, you're going to use that term throughout the conversation. Okay, so let me recap where we are here. We've talked about this, that, and the other. We've got the spousal wousel trust for Mary after you pass away. So you want to use their language when describing your solution. And then again, I keep talking about asking questions and listening. Someone told me once to keep it real simple. We all have two ears and one mouth. So under that ratio, you ought to be listening 66 and 2/3% of the time, or 2/3 of the time, and speaking only 1/3 of the time. I actually think it should go even beyond that. But I also heard one time that in sales, and yes, I would say even though we're lawyers and we're in the concept of providing legal services, professional services, we're consultants, we're professionals, we guide people. We really are in sales, and in sales meetings, someone once told me that those who ask the questions in the meeting are the ones who are in control of the meeting. So again, there'll be more videos on this. This video is just about the very start of the meeting, but those who ask the questions are the ones that are in control. All right, hope that helps. We'll see you next time.